Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Cable. Chapters is the television show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm Elliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. On this episode of Chapters, we're going to talk about traveling and travel writing, and we're pleased to have author and newspaper reporter Dave Lavender from the Huntington Herald-Dispatch with us here today. Dave is the entertainment and features reporter for the Herald-Dispatch, and we're going to talk about his two outstanding travel books, Dave Trippin, Travel Stories, written by him, and photography by Dave Lavender, his wife. And we're also going to talk about his second book, Dave Trippin, which is also written by him, and it's a day tripper's guide to the Appalachian galaxy of Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and beyond. And we're delighted to have Dave Lavender here with us today to talk about these two books. Welcome, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us on. We really appreciate what you've done through the years, to highlight local authors and local publishers and people out there, putting out the word about Appalachia and kind of what we have here.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. It's been a lot of fun. I want to start first and talk about your most recent book, Dave Trippin, and then we'll go back and talk about your first book as well. Tell us a little bit about how this all got started for you and your wife in terms of thinking about, we're going to do this and we're going to put this together and we're going to write this book. How did all this come about?
Yeah, well, for both books, the idea came about that we came back here. Been a journalist for quite a while, and my wife's a big traveler. She had backpacked some of the quintessential trips, right? Had backpacked through Europe as a college student, and had done some travel like that as well. And we had kind of traveled all over as journalists, and we're kind of maybe the original hobos, right? Journalists are used to traveling to a lot of places, and we both worked for USA Today Gannett, and so we worked at a lot of different sites. And one of the things that we did when we worked at different sites, as we found whether we were living outside of Columbus or outside Nashville, or if I was working in Cincinnati, they always treated it like a tourist, and so always really dug in and saw more of a community in a 3-month internship maybe than some people who had been there for 20 years, because they more or less went home and didn't go back out, and so, which is fine. But anyway, when we moved back here to Huntington about 15 years ago, I told my wife, who's from upstate New York, I want to treat my home like a tourist, and I said I want to really dig in and make sure that we're getting out there. And we had one kid at the time, and when we moved back, I was like, I really want to introduce our kids to the things I loved, Camden Park and some of the just quintessential things that we have here, and Carter Cave's, a lot of the outdoor places, and and a lot of the amazing college towns and things that we do have here, from Berea, Kentucky to Athens, Ohio. So sort of the idea for our books has come from that, just sort of going out and exploring, and so we started out doing a kind of series for the newspaper, and there's always been a sort of a Chevy Chase element to it, because as journalists we're always very frugal, and so duct taping things together, and so that's and planning things out as well as we can, but knowing that life always happens around really good plans, and so it's always a little bit comical when we go anywhere, I guess, and so our idea was just have a kind of a fun-filled family travel series for the paper, and then see if we couldn't put those into books. And the first one was easier to put together, I would say, because during the second one, the kids are getting older, and and kids at different points have different levels of responsibility. But as they get sort of older, all of a sudden you're just volunteered to the max. And so as we were putting this book together, I found out, I'm the secretary of the PTO, I'm the Boy Scout leader, I'm the this and that, and I'm in the concession stand at a high school football game. How did I end up here?
Sure.
Would you like some sauce with your hot dog? And so it really the second book became really tough to put together, because we had so many obligations with the kids. But kind of a fun part of that, though, was that we incorporated some of the trips, in the second book, were things that we did with them. So for instance, one of the more unique trips I thought in our whole region is Shaker Village. It's one of the last Shaker villages left in the United States and south of Lexington, and we were lucky enough to go there because our oldest son Jacob was he's still in it, a Civil War reenacting unit. It's the only Civil War reenacting unit connected to a public school in the United States. And it's at Huntington Middle School, and there's a great former West Virginia Teacher of the Year, Mike Sheets, great history teacher there. And so he has a reenacting unit for the kids, and so we get to go with Mike. He got invited to Shaker Village and to do a reenactment because the Shakers were, of course, pacifists, but they fed soldiers from both sides, and they were on the main route from the north to the south, so they literally had thousands of troops coming in. So we got to go and reenact, and this is my kind of reenacting, a feeding of the troops one weekend.
Very nice, very
So,
nice.
which was a lot of fun, and as we found out, I think I mentioned it in the book, it was really fun to see, an authentic reenactment, except for the fact that, I think they were giving like 6-year-olds big cups of black coffee, which they end up staying all night. Could barely get them to bed, all these kids. But anyway, so that was sort of the idea in the second book, is like some of the trips that we took were actually with, some of the kid groups or on spring break. And that was the thing in the second book. So a lot of the trips in the second book, we actually took longer trips because we carved out some spring break trips. And so that was sort of a delineation between the first book and the second, was that we were sort of like both books fitting in trips when we could, weekend trips. And that's sort of the idea of the series. Where can we go within a day's drive? But then the second book becomes some, a little bit longer trips. Like we just did a week-long trip in Pocahontas County and really got to, hit that really hard and sort of in the off season too, which was interesting because pretty much had one of West Virginia's most beautiful places to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that was a really neat trip. So the idea is, like, as we're getting older, is sort of you fit them in when you can. But that's the best travel, right? I mean, you try to travel when you can, and every time you do, it's a pleasure and sometimes mad too.
Sure, absolutely. And in both of these books, and especially in your Dave Trippin book, you've got features of West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky, and we'll talk in just a minute about some of your other places in the second book that are outside of the area. How did you determine which ones were going to be from West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky, given that you've traveled a lot and gone to different places?
Yeah.
How did you narrow it down and say, we're going to put these in the second book and these places in the first book?
Right. Well, in the first book, we pretty much did like a dozen trips in all 3 states, and so then by the second book, we were figuring out, okay, well, what didn't get in the first book that was superb, world-class, unbelievable kind of places. And so, we were looking at each state, and that was the first thing that we decided was that, okay, we need to have, say like Pocahontas County. It's got Greenbank, it's got Cass, it's got Watauga, which is one of our longest, or largest state parks, and then the Greenbrier River, on and on and on and on. I mean, it's just a really, just an amazing place. And of course, the National Radio Astronomy Lab is Greenbank is the place. It's, in our space place, very, very unique to the world. And so we said, we've got to put in Greenbank, because it's in Pocahontas County. And then in Kentucky, the most arches east of the Rockies and east of the Mississippi is, of course, in Red River Gorge, over 100 natural bridges, and it's only, less than 2 hours away. And you can take just a beautiful scenic drive down through 64, then down through Moorhead, and go through Daniel Boone National Forest, which is a gorgeous drive, and then you're into like some of the most unique scenery in the east, and it looks like feel like you're in Utah or something. You feel like and so you're like you're Arches or something. So anyway, so that was the most amazing place in Kentucky. We thought that it's really close to Huntington. It's a very easy day trip. Everyone should do it. There's no reason why everyone, if you love the outdoors at all, could not go to that. And even if you're disabled, you can go, and there's the sky lift, and you can go out, and there's a bunch of accessible trails at River Gorge. It's really cool. And so then in Ohio, the one thing that we were looking at when it comes to tri-state travel is that I always call Myrtle Beach is like it's like the southern panhandle of West Virginia. And so, the Carolinas, like, we're going to Carolinas in a few weeks, right? So everybody kind of drifts to the Carolinas during the summer, but we often forget that even closer drive and, pretty amazing beaches and some amazing waters up in Lake Erie. And so we cherry-picked an old trip that we had done about 20 years ago, and we redid it with the boys, and it's Pelee Island up in Canada. So it's the largest island in Lake Erie, and it's very secluded, and it's pretty much made up of wineries, a couple hunting reserves, and some bed and breakfast and some camp spots, and not much else. They don't have a couple of museums, and but if you like to camp and fish and stuff, it's just a really amazing getaway. And we bicycled all over the island, and kind of had the place to ourselves for the most part. Really amazing getaway. I felt like I was in the Caribbean. It was just so beautiful on Lake Erie, when you're out there and there's nobody else, and you don't worry about sharks.
Yeah, very, very true. Excellent point. Excellent point about that. One of the things I really like about both of these travel guides, in addition to you being very thorough and telling us, where you and your family went and where you stayed, is you're honest. I mean, you say when you go to a certain place, for example, Great Wolf Lodge, just talked about in your second book, and you talk about this is what we liked, this is what we didn't like, this is kind of what we wish we had done that we didn't get to do, this is sort of what we did that we wish we hadn't spent so much time on. Is that something you set out to do, or originally is give sort of that two-sided approach, or is it just something that happened when you sat down and started writing what you liked and didn't like about those places?
Oh, definitely. Well, it's definitely both. I mean, we always feel it's like the journalist's task to just try to see as sharp through something as a wide-angle lens of whatever you're doing, and you just can't do it all, right? I mean, that's what my wife always says that to me. You can't do it all, and so whatever you do, try to do it quality. And it's very obviously very subjective. I mean, it's our opinion, it's our trip. So I always tell people, you grab the book and enjoy the kind of, reading like what we did, and but certainly don't take it as the Gospel of Luke. Take it as this was our honest opinion on how we enjoyed it, but we may have a wacky opinion. Other people might like this, and so I just like to get people to these places, and then people can like pick out what's good for them. Some people might like all the water slides or like this or that, and so definitely is we try to make it very first person, very subjective, but then also you just give an honest opinion about here's some other things. Man, I wish we would have done it all, but we didn't have time. And here's one other thing in the book that we really tried to be helpful at, and this is one thing we did in the first book too, and I do it in the newspaper as well, is try to give people a lot of related ideas. So like if we went to Pelee Island, here's like a breakout that after the story about maybe more islands or more natural, more good places to hike, whatever the story was, we tried to further people's interest into that subject by saying, oh, by the way, here's some other things that are related. Maybe you can't make it to Pelee Islands, but you could make it to somewhere else. You could make it somewhere that's related. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
also people lots of ideas.
Absolutely, and there's plenty of ideas in here, I think. And also, I know your wife is a photographer. One of the great features about both of these books, a lot of pictures that are there. She took all the pictures, right? And how did that decision go in terms of choosing which pictures to put in the book when you went to your different visits?
Yeah, well, I mean, she takes a lot of photos. She's a Lavender photography, a Terrell Lavender, and so she's Syracuse grad, great photographer, and but now it's getting to the point where the kids are taking photos, and I'll take some photos, on my phone or whatever, and so it sort of goes up in the air. I mean, like she'll edit and sort of figure out what to put in there, but a lot of times we just try to put in one scenic stuff, because there's so many good scenic places in West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio. But then also maybe some stuff that just sort of captures a family moment. Mm-hmm. So it is very much like, in that sense, it's a little bit scrapbooky. But we just try to show people like, hey, here's kind of fun you can have in this place. Yep. And so make it very, and it's funny, people have already clung on to that idea. It's sort of just, very, very, although it's a professional person taking the photos, it's very just fam-friendly photos. So like the first cover of this book, that's actually on a Jones soda bottle now. And so, foo-foo berry. But so it's like, I think people like just sort of we try to capture a little moment. And on the first book, this is like Will crying as he's running away from
I was gonna say,
a dinosaur world.
We'll put that cover up on the screen of your first book, Dave Trippin. I was going to ask you, where was this taken again with the dinosaur?
Yeah, that was over in Clay City, in the Cave City, Kentucky. Okay. Yeah, over in western Kentucky, just right by Mammoth Caves. Okay. So it's taken over there. But I was going to say, we don't always pick, I would say, the best photo, but it's the best photo that illustrates the fun that we had on the trip, or a moment on the trip.
That's great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a great approach.
Yeah.
And one of the great features too about these books, is the humor. There's so much humor. And I have to ask you about this one passage because in your second book, Dave Trippin, you take us to Canada and you take us to Florida and some other places like that. One of the places you include is Disney World. And I just wanted to read a passage, and I have to ask you if you actually witnessed this. You say towards the end of the Disney section, which, by the way, if anybody has not been to Disney World or hasn't been in a long time, you give a lot of very good advice. But there's something so funny at the end that I just absolutely just got my attention immediately. And it says, last but not least, be courteous, be kind, but don't worry about everybody else there that you may very well encounter. And you're talking about people that you run into at Disney World, like we did. Every kind of crazy, from chubby kids licking fallen desserts off the ground like they were on the set of Willy Wonka, to moms going Mel Gibson-like nutso on crying toddlers at 11 o'clock at night. Did you witness that? And my goodness, if you did, what was your family's reaction when you saw sort of these two meltdowns in two totally different ways from people?
Well, we did. Well, we had those kind of. We had like one day we just saw two like complete meltdowns, and we went to this like they show fireworks and they have like a dessert. It's like a dessert buffet, and then you watch the fireworks. Well, our kids we decided this when we were going to take our kids to Disney. I mean, you walk about 8 to 10 miles a day, and I think some of that advice is in there. And so a lot of people, that's fine. They want to take little kids, they want to take their little princesses, but you really can't expect. Your little princess to be like a backpacker. She's not going to do 10 miles a day. She's going to melt down about whatever o'clock after she hit about 7 miles on her tennis shoes. And so we noticed that. So we took our boys when they were older, and they were old enough to ride the big rides, and they were old enough to like not be able to hike. And so what we noticed was that there were parents there who felt like they hadn't got their money's worth until they stayed the very last second, and so they at that point were on somebody else's trip. Right. They need, and what I always tell people, if you have little kids or if you have older kids with special needs, you need to be on your own trip. This is your family time. This is a special time. You don't have to go do everything. And so, while it's really funny, it's also kind of sad to see people who are like, don't understand that they're not on their own trip. Right. And so I always tell people, you need to have the guts to be, I'm on my own trip. I don't care what everybody else is doing. If I want to stay in the hotel and swim until noon and then go to Disney World at 1 because my kids like to sleep in and as I'm on vacation, let's do that. Yeah. And so, but anyway, we did at that ice cream buffet thing, saw a cone go on the ground, and this kid just jumped down like a Wolverine and just give it all he got. He got it.
I mean, it just caught my attention because I've been to Disney World and I've seen different meltdowns. But you're absolutely right about that. Some of my best trips to Disney World have been where I just laid at the pool all day. Swam all day, or went and got a massage or something like that.
It's vacation.
That was, to me, for that day, that was perfect. And I think you're good at offering that information. Yeah. I wanted to ask you too, Dave, about these books. How does your work as a journalist, and how does your wife's work as a photographer, how do those experiences enhance what you're doing when you travel and you write about where you travel?
Well, I would say I was actually quoting somebody this weekend about this, and I was quoting Clarence Gatemouth Brown. He said on Mountain Stage, and he said his dad gave him 2 words of advice: pay attention. And I think that's the one thing definitely been blessed with as journalists is that we have to, as a writer, you pay attention, your antenna are up, and you maybe notice things that other people don't, and just like, oh, there's like a little spot, oh, there's like a little restaurant over there, I didn't even see that. So we're just paying more attention, I would say, than the average person just walking down the street. And we're also just voraciously try to research when we go somewhere, and read a lot of travel books, and the newspaper. I always get a newspaper if we're in a new town, and get the entertainment guide and get the alternative weekly and see, hey, is there a show? I don't know how many times I've been, say, in like DC or somewhere, and I remember one time Trill and I went and hit the metro, like we were downtown, and I was looking through an alternative weekly and saw where Alison Krauss was going to be at Wolf Trap, and we just jumped on the metro and went out there. Didn't have tickets, it was sold out, but there was a couple, another couple had gotten sick. They gave us 2 tickets, and so it was just sort of like paying attention. So as a journalist, they're definitely paying attention to what the possibilities are in a city where you're going. and then also being aware when you're there. So just sort of being aware of your surroundings and yeah, and just sort of like, yeah, sort of like just more antenna up on what cool things to do. Or when you need to, pull back. And like, so at Disney, we retired, we all stopped and had a nap at Disney. So instead of having that meltdown, we all took a nap on the on the lawn.
Yeah.
Which I guess is still okay. We had some people look at us, but I guess you're still allowed to sleep on the grass at Disney World.
Absolutely. I would hope so, especially as much as it costs to go.
Right.
Now, Dave, your first book, Dave Trippin, came out in 2008.
Yeah.
Your second book, Mo Dave Trippin, came out here in 2015.
Just
came out
out.
In June of 2015. So how long does it take you to put one of these travel books together in terms of traveling? I mean, how many places do you have to go to before you feel like you've got enough to write about? And then from the writing and the coordinating with the pictures, as you talked about, and the editing, how long does it take to put one of these guides together?
Well, it really takes, it's taken like both books. It's taken just a number of years as we're just trying to, fill in like travel that would be apropos for the book, with regular life, and then when it comes down to the editing process and putting it all together, it really took, I think on both cases, and certainly this one, this last winter was just a nasty winter, and we had been talking about, it's like, we got to put the next book out. We're sitting on all these trips, and we usually waited until we had at least like 24 good trips, and to try to, spray them out, so that scatter shot, from Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and then this one, a few places that you can fly to, because flights to Florida became so cheap.
Right.
And so all of a sudden you could be sitting, and we have one to the Keys, all of a sudden you could be sitting, halfway down the Keys, and less time than it took you to drive to Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And so that sort of like was a new thing that happened the last few years here in Huntington, direct flights to Florida that made cherry picking some of those places make more sense. But really, it took one solid, nasty winter to not only did I get a cross-country ski to work this winter, but Trill and I finally got to sit down and like really go at the book and kind of make it happen and get it in a good place where we felt comfortable putting it out and inspiring some more people just to go do it and even if you're busy. So it was good. It was good. This one was, I think, even more rewarding to get done just because the life had gotten so much busier as the kids have gotten older.
Sure.
And just a lot more responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And stuff.
So that leads to my next question. Where is Dave Lavender and the Lavender family going next? Where are some of the places that you haven't been to, or some of the
that we just
places
have to go?
Yes.
Well, I really think, one of the things I really want to do, and we did this when they were little, but I really want to go back and revisit it because it's been repackaged, is over in Elkins, they have the Cheap Mountain Salamander and the Durban Rocket and new Tiger Flyer, now also booking casts out of that stable, which is a great idea, out of that private company. And so they with them have like really have some great amazing trips planned for the summer. Like we have some friends that are in some old time bands. I'm in an old time band too, and so they're doing like a train at Cass, like up to the top of the mountain, doing an old time pick all night, campfire. People are camping out, and then the train comes to get you in the morning. I mean, just that kind of trip in West Virginia. Those are just really, really, really special because that's one, at a special place, but two, you have an extra layer of this really special something happening that's really sort of unique to hear. But so that's one place definitely is like to do Cass that way and to do the railroads up that way. Another place to really want to go to, and sort of a trend that's happened in the last few years, is like got some great craft beer festivals. And so one of them is going to be up at Timberline. It's one of the last family-owned ski resorts in the East. Mm-hmm. And anyway, the ski resorts are always a great summer place to go travel. And so people always think about it in the winter, of course, but in the summer you can usually get a great deal, and in the fall too. And so we're going to try to go up there to Blue Skies in late August. They have about 25 bands, and it's actually a very family-friendly event and a good family-friendly resort. And so they actually, one of their festivals is in the new book, and that's the Snowy Luau, which I think is it's more like one of the most unique festivals in West Virginia, because it's sort of like the great culture of Hawaii and native culture, authentic native culture meets West Virginia and the hospitality of West Virginia in the spring. So
That's great.
it's a very bizarre, very fun festival at Timberline in the spring, like usually spring break week.
Fantastic.
Usually St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, very good.
But so definitely want to go to Blue Skies and do that, and also want to go back. There's a few I want to go back to in the summer too. I always love that college towns aren't that busy, so I really want to go back to some places that we have visited before, but I haven't been back in a few years now to like Berea, Kentucky, and it's one of my favorite little progressive cities in the country, and Athens, Ohio too. I always love going to Athens.
Yeah.
And I want to go, we love to bicycle, and so I bicycle to work and have for 15 years. But I like to take the kids and go bicycle. I'd love to go do some longer bike trails. So there's a real good one out of Chillicothe, Ohio's got a real good one. And then Athens to Nelsonville, the Hockhocking, I want to do that one too. So I'd like to do cherry pick a couple more bike trips, and definitely that's in the plan.
That sounds like something that will make good fodder for another book as well. So that's terrific. In our final moments with you, Dave, if anyone wants to get in contact with you to talk more about your books, or they'd like to get copies of Dave Trippin or Mo Dave Trippin, how can they do that? How can they get in contact with you? Where can they get copies of your books?
Yeah, so right now we have them locally. We have them at Red Caboose, and we're going to get them here probably Empire, but we have them through Create Space and through Amazon. And definitely highly recommend Create Space. There's been a lot of local authors who've went through Amazon's self-pub unit, and they're really efficient. And the game changed between the first book and the second book. We had to really shop around for a publisher, and we had to do a lot of copies. We ended up doing 2,500 copies the first time around. This one we were able to do just print on demand, which has been really nice. But anyway, so Create Space and Amazon, and then. We'll probably maybe do some signings, but then people can also just if they want to get fresh trips. I do one a week in the newspaper every Thursday, our weekend section. Yeah, and stop by if you go to Red Caboose. Make sure you stop by the CVB, Convention and Visitors Bureau. Tyson has all of our brochures. I have 4 walking tours. We got the downtown Huntington and Old Central City, and I've done one of Guyandotte and then one of Ironton as well. Who I highly recommend the Ironton as a walking tour. And we also do the HD. We also do the visitor's guide. So we've been trying to, since we moved back, we've been really trying to treat it like a tourist but one who really appreciates the local history here. We have so much to offer, and we're just really blessed to be here in the tri-state where we have a lot of undiscovered territory.
Absolutely.
Because I always feel like if you're from Kentucky, you know Kentucky really well, but you've probably been to Louisville more times than you've been, to Charleston.
Sure.
And I find that with West Virginia as well. People really travel West Virginia hard, but they've never been to Carter Caves and some places that I'm really surprised they've not been to, and same way with Ohio. So it's really fun to mix it up and to tell people from each state some of the jewels that are just right, maybe 20 minutes from them.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of great places.
Absolutely, and I think anybody who wants to learn more about what are some of those diamonds in the rough in terms of trips that you can go on with your family will enjoy your books. Dave Lavender, the author of Dave Trippin, Travel Stories, A Day Tripper's Guide in the Appalachian Galaxy to Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia, and also the author of his newest book, Mo Dave Trippin, which is further trips in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky, and also some areas in Florida and Canada and elsewhere, along with the photography provided by his wife, Tora Lavender. We appreciate you coming on Chapters, and we encourage anyone who's looking for some good day trips or some good family-friendly events and looking to see and wants to see the good and the bad about all those trips and also have a little bit of humor to check out your books because they're excellent. We appreciate you coming on Chapters. Thanks so much.
Elliot. I always love going places, and I always love not being in such a hurry. Sometimes the destination wasn't even, it was amazing, but sometimes some of our best stuff was just stopping along the way.
Yeah,
you never know what you're going to run into.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, keep traveling, and when you get another book on or another book done, we'll certainly have you back on to talk about it.
Thank you very much, and thanks for what you're doing here at Chapters.
Thank you so much. And we want to take also a moment to thank Charlotte McCoy and her staff at Empire Books and News for not only providing our studio taping space here today, but for also being our sponsor of the show. We encourage you to stop by Empire Books and News to satisfy all your reading tastes And we want to remind you that they have the largest selection of magazines in the tri-state. So if you're a magazine reader or somebody in your household is a magazine reader, they've got every magazine for you right here at Empire Books and News. And also, we'd like to remind you that we have an email address where you can send us feedback, questions, and comments about this chapter's program or any chapter's program that you've seen on Armstrong Cable. And that address is appearing right here at the bottom of the screen, LP4, the letter L, letter P, number 4, at zoominternet.net. We appreciate all the comments and feedback that we receive. And also, if you want to go back and check out a previous episode of Chapters, we've made that possible for you through YouTube and the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube. That address is also popped up here at the bottom of the screen, www.youtube.com/Armstrong One Wire, all one word. From there, click on the Chapters tab, and you can go back and watch all the previous episodes from over 50 episodes, of interviews that we've done with authors, editors, and publishers. So we encourage you to go back and look at those again for a second or third time, and we know many of you have done that, and we appreciate that so much. But if you're looking for former episodes of Chapters, maybe you've missed one or you want to go back and see one again, it's made possible for you there through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube. And that will do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.